Coming up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, we process what in tarnation we witnessed Saturday night from Jones Stadium. We'll talk offense, we'll talk defense, we'll talk turnovers, we'll talk running the ball, sort of, and how much we love analytics.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to see you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. And thanks as always for making us your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Right now, when you bet on the Super Bowl winner with FanDuel, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season at FanDuel.com/locked on. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. And Chris, great to be back with you once again, my man. Kicking off another week. Unfortunately, not in the way we want to do it. We got a whole lot to digest from Saturday night's affair at Jones Stadium, as it was a close but no cigar engagement for the Red Raiders and Ducks. Lot to like, lot to be frustrated with as you go down against a good football team that came to your house. So we'll dive into many different things from the ball game. We're going to get to some risk and reward as you were rolling the dice. And for the most part, coming up, Snake Eyes, we'll hear from Joey Maguire on that. You also did run the damn ball-ish, maybe in a way that we didn't quite anticipate. And we'll ask the question, are we changing expectations only 2 weeks into the season? But first, Chris, let's get to the big picture view with Red Raider head coach Joey Maguire.
Really proud of the players. Man, I thought they fought their tails off. I thought they, we didn't bounce back with a win, of course, but bounced back from a really tough defeat last week. But I was proud of how hard they played. I know they're extremely frustrated with a loss because, it was right there to go win the football game. We'll look at the film tomorrow and go through our plan to win, but a lot of it is, what we talked about and was a challenge for me and the coaches and the players is, we've gone through 2 games, we're 0-2, and I ask them, is it us or them? And it's us right now. We're beating ourselves with untimely penalties and turnovers, and so we've got to do a better job with that. And then we're not creating enough pressure on the quarterback, and we're not creating enough turnovers. So those are the things that got to be addressed in a hurry, getting ready, because it really doesn't matter who we play next week or the next week or the next week. If we keep these self-inflicted wounds, then we're going to have a hard time getting better. And so we're really going to concentrate on that and get better.
Chris, the heights of frustration, you can hear it there in his voice. It was 27-18, a Tech lead with 6:16 left in the third. You got to win that game. You got to win it at home. You got to win it with an old team. You did a lot of good things in all phases of the game, really. And I think you did empty your buckets, left it all on the field, but just not good enough to get over what you're kind of doing to yourself in a lot of ways, much less the other team, man. So I know there's got to be frustration throughout the building today.
Yeah, and I right before Joey sat down and gave those comments, I was able to talk to him. It's one of the hardest parts of what I do, man. It's like there's not a good time to like knock out a post-game interview after a tough, frustrating kind of, emotional loss, because the emotion is raw. And I think that, that this is one of those deals where the game was a lot closer than the score is going to indicate. It's one of those deals where you don't feel better if you lose 50-0 or something, but you kind of would have like understood it or grasped it a bit better. But you played with these guys. I think you had yourself in a variety of different chances, and they're good enough anyway. But you can't give them extra chances. That's the. They're and in some ways it's shocking that the game was as close as it was. I don't know how I thought I'd feel because I said it repeatedly. You could play really well and still lose. And I guess I felt like you did play well, although you weren't perfect, far from it. and I think that's kind of that's the part that costs you is the not perfect or the, and like the Rashad Williams penalty on the opposing sideline in the last drive when they're driving down to kick the game-winning field goal, and it's just the quarterback's out of bounds. You just shove him 15 yards. Just things like that. I just wouldn't have envisioned being an issue with this team, but some of these things still are. But again, shooting yourself in the foot, frustrating.
I think you gave a winning effort as a team.
Yeah.
Definitely wasn't perfect, wasn't even close to it. Was it good? It's pretty good, but are you talented enough to overcome the parts that aren't good? No, I think that's been proven through 2 weeks, Chris, whether it's things happening on the field or some calls made on the sideline, because obviously there are some big moments and decisions that will be under the microscope this week, but you're just not good enough to get over those things, whether it's penalties like that or the turnovers you allude to, or again, some of the gambles you take that don't pay off. Not good enough to get over those things. But I really felt like certainly defensively, that was a winning effort. You should have been able to win a game with that defensive effort against the Oregon Ducks. I think offensively, Chris, what really plays into the frustration is maybe not sometimes just a failure or a drive that goes poorly, but how it goes poorly or how you fail. I mean, there's some really, really dramatic ways in which you figure out how to get off the field as the offense without scoring a touchdown, that is. But some of the turnovers, you're just sitting there thinking, God help us. How is this possibly our fortune as a football team? I mean, there's one time it was so tech, it hurt. It wasn't a turnover, but I think Tyler Shuck got sacked by about 6 guys, and somehow the refs still say we're cheating. You get called for a holding, you got 5 guys on top of the quarterback. How does that work out? Anyway, I thought it was a winning effort, but you didn't win the game, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. Some of the things I loved the start to both halves, Chris. You come right out of the gates there in the first quarter, first time you had the opportunity, 6 plays, 85 yards, boom, touchdown. Third quarter, which I think is an overlooked period in a game. When you start the second half, everybody's a little dreary from their popcorn visit, maybe sitting on the throne for a little while. You've been talking on the concourse, going to see you at church tomorrow. We're out of the mindset. And then, boom, you get back in there to your seat. Like 2 minutes have gone by, and the other team's already knocking on the door sometimes. Well, that was Texas Tech this time. Come out in the third quarter, 5 plays, 75 yards, boom, touchdown. I mean, there were things to like in all phases. And again, that's just why I leave the building, probably like so many others, frustrated because you're so close, but it ain't horseshoes or hand grenades, so it doesn't count. You're taking your second L.
And that's what, Tony Bradford said that after the game as well. He's like, we are going to get this figured out. We are so close. And it's, he's mature enough to maybe see that. And I know some of the fans are ready to have you 0-12 right now. Like, okay, just shut it down. Hey, just forget it. We're like, let's just put up the helmets up and let's just shut it down and everything.
Get the meat judging season.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Basketball season's just 58 days away. That's right. They are close, and I do think if they'll keep on the same trajectory with the effort and the improvement, I thought from week 1 to week 2, because I think we clearly saw that. I like your chances, but again, until you get a result, it's fair for people to question.
Would be remiss if we're not mentioning no Dennis Wilburn, still no Baskerville, no Rodriguez, obviously no Tyreek Matthews. There were some other guys that were missing in action as well, which is, again, part of why I'm sitting there thinking, damn, I can't be mad at this effort they're giving. I think it's a winning effort, but you come up short when it's Ben Roberts versus Bo Nix. Huh? And defensively, you still are in a position to give your team a chance to win the game. I mean, good grief.
No Dennis Wilburn. Still no Coy Aiken on offense. No Cameron Valdez either. He had a shoulder issue that kept him out. He was suited up, but they were unlikely to play him. I think Nehemiah Martinez would have gotten the backup running back snaps. And then in the midst of the game, here's the other thing I think we'll find out more as the week goes along, but Joseph Adedire comes out. That didn't look particularly good. Tyler Owens comes out late in the game with what they were pushing around his quad, which is never good. Anyway, I need to get healed up quickly.
Yeah, no question about it. Chris, let's pivot a little bit and look a little bit closer at one aspect of the game that was kind of wild to take in because it came about in a weird way. I'm talking about establishing a ground game. First, today's episode brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company, changing the non-alcoholic beer game one swig at a time, and it's time for your game-changing moment of the week. This week, it's 2nd and 5 from your own 47-yard line, trailing number 13 Oregon late in the fourth quarter, 31-30. When under pressure, Tyler Shuck is picked by Jeffrey Bassa, who takes it 45 yards to the house to give the Ducks a lead they wouldn't relinquish, winning 38-30 over the good guys. Much like that moment, Athletic Brewing Company is changing the game with non-alcoholic beer that tastes good, great tasting, award-winning, and you're going to find more than 50 styles at athleticbrewing.com. But what you won't find ever is a hangover with Athletic Brewing Company. Change the game by finding Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic beer at a store near you today or online at athleticbrewing.com. And right now, first-time customers can get 15% off your first online order by using the code LOCKEDON. That's code LOCKEDON for 15% off your first online order. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply with Athletic Brewing Company and athleticbrewing.com. Fit for all times. I'm talking about establishing a ground game. Now, as you sat there throughout the game, you may have been thinking, this isn't going too well. Taj Brooks, 6 touches, 66. Seemed like it was going well and he was touching it, but he wasn't touching it much. But at the end of the night, now these are sack-adjusted yards. So this is not counting all the rush yards that you lose as a result of a sack that for some reason college football loves to combine together. Sack adjusted, you went for 216 on the night on the ground, 7.7 average per carry. Shuck went for 19 times for 60 yards. Again, these are sack adjusted yards. And I already told you Brooks, 66 on 6 carries. Chris, I feel like if I'm a fair man, I can't leave that game saying you didn't run the ball. It just came about in maybe a way I wasn't anticipating. What'd you make of the ground game? Big production, but is that kind of thing sustainable? And given what you just mentioned about Valdez as well, how are we going to see it evolve in some coming weeks?
Yeah, I think it is sustainable. I think it's just a matter of this is how they felt they could win the game here and put their best foot forward. I think they were concerned on their advantage of running the ball in a traditional sense based on how good Oregon's defensive line is. And I think when you saw it a few times early, it didn't go well. But I think the QB run game, and I think they probably wish they would have done it earlier last week as well. But here's the thing about doing this. Whether it works, whether it doesn't work, whether you want to do it, whether you don't want to do it, it is a gamble. And you are rolling the dice with your, risking Tyler, putting him in harm's way, and this goes without saying, but at every level, when you run your quarterback, it's just. But I can't, people want you to run it, and I did too. And you look up, and it's like you ran it well. He's got the longest run. Did Tyler Shuck the other night, 58 yards of the Joey Maguire era. Yeah. We mentioned what do we drop that stat in the offseason? You didn't have a run longer than 40 yards in the last year, and you were one of only 8 programs in the country that didn't hit that 40+ yard mark with a run. He popped one off for 58.
And the long was 12, I think, in week 1. That was our long rush.
And it was by Shuck.
And Shuck had the 58, and Brooks had a 35er on Saturday. So all of a sudden, you found some daylight.
Yeah. Because, I think one of my concerns, whether it was, hey, do you have a superstar? Do you got a dude? But here's the other way to look at that. How much juice do you still lack on offense?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of separation at a lot of positions here. You have good players. Don't mistake what I'm saying. But I think there's not a lot of separation at wideout. There's not a lot of separation at running back. Shuck's certainly not, just elite level speed by any means. And so I think this is scheme. This is manufacturing it. This is just trying to give yourself an advantage. And anytime you run QB power and some of those kinds of plays, except for when it's 4th and 2 on your own 33, it was working. Right. And you're pulling guards. You've got an extra blocker. It's just hard for the defense to match up against. And I thought there was some of that he was able to, churn it out and keep the chains moving. He did so repeatedly and was over 100 yards himself. And I just don't know if you were in that game at all without that aspect.
Yeah, hard to imagine that you would be.
Yeah, because they're really good, and that's what people, I think, if Dan Lanning can keep that side of the ball healthy and playing that way, they're going to be a handful because they have the offensive weapons like you're used to seeing, but now they've got some defense to go with it, which is why he was hired. And if they keep some of their guys healthy, namely Bo Nix and all that, they should be a handful. Although that Pac-12 conference all of a sudden on paper looks like a nightmare to try to maneuver through. But yeah, that's why I think that they did it, but it worked.
Yeah, that was really interesting, man. And I admire the toughness of Tyler Shuck. He's tougher than boot leather, but he's just limited. And I don't know, man, through the first 2 weeks of the season, the pocket awareness or the pocket feel doesn't seem great. As I said last week, it's like there's a flinch here or there. I still felt like maybe we saw some of that against Oregon. Easy to say from my seat with a Miller Lite in my hand. I know it's much different when you're in the quarterback shoes, obviously, but from the 12-minute mark on in the third quarter, Chris, 3 of the last 5 offensive drives ended in turnovers. You had 2 picks by Shuck. This is not counting the Hail Mary, by the way. 2 picks by Shuck and then 1 turnover by the coaching staff as you make the call to go for it on 4th down with 12:59 left in the game. That was from your own 33, leading 28-25, and that seems like a great opportunity to segue into what will be one of the more engaging conversations, I think, for fans this week, Chris. Some of those calls, some of those decisions that get spotlighted when you lose the game. You win the game, you may gloss over some of the stuff that didn't work out for you because enough did to get the win, but that's not the situation we are in here today. So let's talk about rolling the dice. And really, there are a couple of different fronts, I guess. The 2-point conversion attempt early in the game and the 4th down decision, I think, later in the game are the ones that are going to get the most attention. Not exactly the same variety of gamble. I think we would all have to kind of understand as far as an extra point is concerned. You did chase some points early after Oregon gets 2 on a touchdown. This was second quarter, 13:01 left after the 7-yard Mason Tharp touchdown catch. Your fail in gaining those 2 points makes it 15-13. Then obviously you got the 4th down attempt let's get to later in the game. But first, let's take a listen to Red Raider head coach Joey Maguire once again, talking about specifically here the 2-point conversion attempt, but of course it also leads to a greater analytical conversation. Here's Joey Maguire. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sportsbook of Locked On. Prepare thyself today for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel. Today, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. But that's not all. All customers, new or old, who bet $5 are going to get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And that makes right now the best time to join FanDuel by downloading their safe, secure, and easy-to-use app where you can bet on anything and everything. And, of course, when you're a winner, you're always paid instantly with FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season with an offer you can't afford to miss. For new customers, $5 you're betting, you're getting $200 back in bonus bets. New or old customers that bet $5, you're getting a $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube or YouTube TV. Again, at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Take advantage of the offer today with FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. First, let's take a listen to Red Raider head coach Joey Maguire once again, talking about specifically here the 2-point conversion attempt, but of course it also leads to a greater analytical conversation. Here's Joey Maguire.
Analytics, it's not like I think we don't have to. I think it's a philosophy thing. So, you're going to hear old school guys go, "Don't chase the points" and all of this stuff, and then you're going to hear analytics people, which we are. There's going to be a point in that game that says go for 2. It said go for 2, and so we didn't get it. But that was what it was. It was nothing. We knew we were going for 2 all the way down, on that drive.
Let's keep it right now to the 2-point conversion, Chris, because I have a specific question for you on the 4th down attempt. want to get to in just a second. But what did you make of early in the game following the Oregon attempt, Texas Tech making that call?
Well, damn it, Oregon, for putting you in this position with that 2-point conversion.
First things first. Damn you, Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, because it just screws everything up. It screws everything up. I mean,
and that's why they do it.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, why? Screw you guys over there for tricking the Red Raiders, man, and converting a 2-point conversion. But
in our home.
Yeah, that's right. Dang it. Yeah, I was, and again, I feel like Joey's. I mean, he's a few years older than me, but and I would actually kind of term him as kind of old school in a lot of ways, although he's very new school too. But I feel like he's talking to me when he's like, "Don't chase points," because that's the way I've always, I don't know, been taught. Is that you never go for 2 like in a scenario unless you have to, and I know that depending on how much you're up or down, hey, it's not going to hurt us if we don't get it. Let's go for 2. Let's try to extend the lead. Or, hey, and if you're trying to get it to the 8 or the 6 or the 3 or the whatever kind of field goal, touchdown, I mean, whatever. But I've always just been taught you don't ever go for a 2-point conversion unless you just have to. You're in the fourth quarter. You're trying to catch up. And I don't know the analytics book and all, because I think so many things factor into it. But if you're going to believe in it, you have to believe in it and do it. Like you can't. It's like last year when we were talking about this. You can't like pick and choose. Like well, I really feel good about this one, but I don't want to follow the rules here, because at that point you're really not. You're not doing it. Like you either need to be all in or all out. Like there's no and I guess it's important to kind of know the numbers at times and like okay, here, if it's overwhelmingly, I'm going to go ahead and follow the numbers. Whereas here, I know it says I should go or whatever, but I'm just not necessarily comfortable with it. I don't like the play call. I don't like the way we're playing. I don't like the weather. I don't know, but it's a philosophy, as you heard him say, and you're kind of either in or out. You can't really be dip your toe in the water mentality there. It's kind of an all or nothing type scenario.
That's kind of interesting because I don't really grasp, and it's probably my simple mind, but I don't really grasp how like being in or out in the second quarter could affect being in or out of the in the fourth quarter. I would think it's got to be case by case. You got to have a feel for the point in the game. But again, nobody's ever offered me $1 to coach a football team. But I'd be so scared of every time you're in that situation of going Bette Midler from Hocus Pocus and just
see, scared is exactly the way. I mean, hey, free point, I'll take it. I'm not gambling. I'm not rolling the dice for 2.
You've told us all the time, bird in hand versus bush.
I'm just, and that's me being soft or I don't know, but I'm taking that until I go, okay, now I have no choice. I'm
soft or smart. I'm gonna go with smart, Chris.
Okay.
Nothing soft about it. Let's get to the 4th down attempt, because I do have this question I think that maybe not as many are considering, and this is not a call I would make in any life, in any game with the same circumstances. If I'm in those shoes, absolutely not. I don't care what the book says. I don't care what Google Maps says. I'm not driving into the lake. There's a lake right here. I don't care what the computer says. There's a lake. I'm not driving into it. 4th and 2, you are ahead on your home field. 12:59 left in the game. It's 28-25. Tech was leading. And for all the reasons that I think we would all grasp, you don't go for this. But here's my question, Chris. You had just come off of, defensively, the lengthiest drive of the game for either team, 6 minutes, 29 seconds. Oregon just went 75 yards over 17 plays. Did that factor in a way that we're not understanding as far as this risk? Because I could saddle up maybe a little bit more with thinking, hey, our defense just going backwards for 7 minutes over 17 plays. So what do you make of that aspect of it? And, of course, what do you make of the call overall?
As I process this after it happened, this is what was going through my mind, okay? Yeah, I think that I even asked Joey about hey man, were your guys tired? And because 17, so we need to keep them on the sideline. We need to give them a break. We need to go on our own 6-minute drive if we can. I wondered if that was in the back of his mind. Also thought at the time, okay, because sometimes, man, coaches like the aggressive mentality, which I love this mindset. It's like we can't, if we want to win this game, we need to go win it. Like I want it in our hands. We need to go win it, and like we need to, but obviously because most of like that particular play call, it had worked a lot of the night. You pulled a guard, but they just stood you up, and it just didn't go anywhere. Now, Joey pointed to analytics and was like, we hit the number. And so this is the conversation I had yesterday with somebody that I was like, well, I hadn't thought about that part. I think that because it factors in everything about the opponent and the game, and it factors in even like whether you're an underdog or not. And I think that maybe that book, again, I have no way of knowing, but I think this person speculated. I was like, it's a valid point. That book may have suggested you're a heavy underdog here in certain situations. If you want to win this game and you're within striking distance, you better go take it. If you're within 4th and 1, 4th and 2, like we like our odds here, so let's not screw around with it and kick it back to an elite level offense. So I don't know. Pick A, B, C, take a bit of all of them. But Joey just pointed to the book. But I bet that's why that book said that potentially is because you were a big underdog, or maybe a bigger underdog than what Vegas thought. I think it actually kicked off at, I saw this, like the spread came down to like 4.5 points.
Yeah, I saw 5.
Okay, yeah. But again, the analytics stuff, it factors in all kinds of things.
I'd be yelling at that book. Yeah. Book, we're ahead. We're not an under. We're winning right now.
And it knows this. Yeah, it knows time left, down distance.
I'm imagining Joey Maguire in his post-game press conference needs to go Donald Trump, like when he used to show us the thing he signs. Remember his front of the desk? Like Maguire needs to get the book out and be like, all right, see guys, this is where it was saying. This is what it was telling us. Because it's such a mystery what the book actually says. But his name is on the contract. Their names are on their contracts, coaching staff-wise. I wouldn't imagine they're doing something they think is foolish. But, man, it runs contrary to a lot of historical football wisdom. But this is a new day. And if that's the identity, commit to the identity, I think, like you were just describing a moment ago. Chris, as far as our expectations before we're out of here, preseason expectations, we all had a chance to come up with our own. Have things changed for us after 2 weeks? And even for a mild prediction like mine, I was an 8-4 guy. I thought maybe 9-4 with a bowl win. Even that's being challenged as you go 0-2, because I'm looking at the schedule and I'm like, man, how do you get to 8 even at this point in time? So I might be budged a little. Not a lot from an 8-4 preseason prediction where I thought the defense would row your boat for better or worse. Offense would be hit or miss. Kind of been the way it has been through the first 2 weeks. But, even an 8-4 projection may be a steep hill right now. How about you coming into the year and then what we've learned through 2 weeks?
Yeah, I'll make my answer somewhat succinct here. I think the way to sum this up is I felt like you would be relevant in the conference race into November, or well into November. And I think that I felt like you could get to the 9 or 10 win category. I also felt like that maybe your floor was 6 or 7. Vegas has you at 7.5 total wins. My expectation, though, was contending for the conference championship. So with an outside shot, it may be something much bigger than that if you were able to maneuver your way early through the season, but that hasn't happened. So until you lose your second, maybe your third conference game, I'm not changing my expectations.
Gotcha.
Until you hit that second loss or third loss, and then you have to, okay, not happening. We're not getting to where we want to go, or we need a lot of help. I won't change my expectation, but it's a valid question, and I certainly understand why it would be asked.
Let us know in the YouTube comments how you feel about that, Chris. Thanks for the time as always, my man. Enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. We'll be here all week. Tarleton State coming to town.
That's right. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Shout out to the Oregon fan who lied to me in the ticket line saying that their defense was Swiss cheese, but they did listen to Locked On Texas Tech, and I love you for that. Safe travels, my friend. We'll see you guys on the other side for another round on Locked On Texas Tech.